There are those times that God says, this is the direction you're going. But most of the time, it's step by step. And he's just leading you to the next thing. And you don't know where he's going, and you don't know what's 3 steps in front of you, but you know the step in front of you is secure because he's there with you.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Doherty, and I'm your host. I have with me today a friend of mine. I've known him from church for decades, and asked him, I think 2 weeks ago, if he would be willing to come on, and he very reluctantly said yes. I know that you hear me say that about most of our guests. It's amazing how many people are scared to death to do this, even though I tell them I can edit. It doesn't matter. But most people, they're not crazy about it. But then it's funny how many of them just get so comfortable and can't believe how fast the interview has gone. Sometimes they just keep talking. They just don't realize that we've been sitting at the table for an hour. But anyway, I do appreciate Israel doing this. I have Israel Turner with me. Israel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it. Israel, now you and I, my goodness, I guess I'm trying to think how long we've known each other, and that's kind of a difficult thing to answer because we probably knew of each other and saw each other before we actually met each other.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but actually knowing each other, I would say that probably has gone back over 30 years.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell everybody where you're from. Where were you born?
I was born in Denver, Colorado. We lived in Wheat Ridge, a suburb of Denver, for about 8 years before we moved down to Boerne, Texas.
What brought you to Boerne?
Dad's work. Things were kind of dry up in Colorado, and things were kind of booming here. So he and my uncle on my mom's side, my mom's brother-in-law, moved down here together and started a business here. So.
Okay, yeah. And your dad is Don Turner, and people may remember that name because we've had Don on the podcast. It's been a couple of years now. Yeah. So what kind of family did you grow up in?
I had my parents and Don and Penny and my sister Gwen, so one sibling. A believing family all the way back. My grandparents were both very active in church. My grandfather started Sunday schools up in the mountains, in the Rocky Mountains. My grandparents on my mom's side were missionaries in Belize when I was born, actually.
Oh, wow.
And so very involved in their churches. I grew up, with just a lot of family that were believers, strong believers.
Okay. Yeah. When did you become a believer?
I started memorizing scripture when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
And it was a ABC memory verse system. And the first two verses were Isaiah 53, 5 and 6 in reverse order. So all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned each one to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. And then for B, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. And so obviously there are a lot of words in there that a 3-year-old didn't understand. But actually it was while Mom explained those verses to me at the age of 3 that I became a believer.
Oh, wow. And so what was it like for you? Do you have memories of, as a young child? What was it like for you from that point?
There's definitely, obviously, you learn a lot from being 3 years old and becoming a believer. So,
Sure.
I never understood eternal security until I was about 12, and one of my aunts pulled me aside and said, "You don't have to keep going forward at camp or whatever to accept the Lord. You're done. You're his." So there's obviously things that I didn't understand at 3 that I learned as I went, but I had a lot of. I remember some of the songs that my grandmother taught me in junior church. She led junior church, so like 3 to 5 before we started sitting in the main service. we had junior church with Grandma, and she taught us fun songs, and I remember those still. Yeah, and I actually learned to read before I went to school based on tapes that we had, the books that went along with them. So I would read along with the story that was being read on the tape. And many of them were either Bible stories, Daniel and the Lion's Den or whatever, or some of the music, the Music Man. I don't know if people remember that, but they had a whole, Maranatha music, had a whole kids section that I was familiar with. And so just had a lot of input early on.
Yeah, that's great. What kind of schooling did you have as a child?
I was in public school from 1st through 6th grade, and it was fine. I did good in class. I was
that here in Texas or
both in? Okay. Yeah, I was 8 when we moved down to Texas. So
did you find at a young age, like at 1st through 6th, that your faith was challenged?
That's a good question. I don't know about challenged. Particularly here in Texas, most people, if they're not believers, they at least have some input. There's even a lot of, they know what church is. They know about.
If they're not believers, they at least say they're believers.
Right, a lot of them do. Yes, that's true. So I don't know that challenge would be the word. I mean, there's my sister. Reason we stopped going to public school was Gwen was starting to hang out with just some people that were bad influences, and I hadn't gotten there. I might have if I had continued.
Right, she's older than you.
Yeah, she's 2 years older than me. So, but then when I started 7th grade, we started homeschooling.
Was that good?
I enjoyed it. I got to do my homework as fast as I wanted to. We were of an age that Mom didn't really lay out our lesson plan. We got our books. I actually went through the books and set up, this many chapters in a week or month or whatever, and then made out cards. And she said, if we wanted to do something, are you finished with this week's stuff? And so we'd show her, yep. So, okay, you can go then, that kind of thing. So I set up my own schedule. I could finish early and do what I wanted to if I got done early. We could do stuff with the family. My aunt was always around, so she and Mom did stuff together, and we got to join them if we had our stuff done. So I enjoyed the freedom. We had some good books. Dad would help with things that Mom couldn't, or the other way around. But a lot of it was self-study, and we were of the right age to start that.
What was your life like, with the Lord during the homeschooling? Do you remember being challenged in any way?
I don't know through the homeschool. We did have Bible study parts because it was a Christian school that we got our books through, and we didn't have to do our GED because we were actually going through an accredited school up in Illinois. Yeah. They would send us our books. We'd send our stuff to them to grade and got grades that way. So, so there was a Bible portion of that we studied. But it was actually, I believe it was when I was 12. My grandmother challenged me to read through the Bible in a year. And I did that.
At 12?
At 12, yeah. Wow.
Did you have some kind of program to go through, or did you just sit down, start Genesis 1:1?
Yeah, I just started at Genesis and worked my way through. Just kind of how many pages, or I can't remember if I did chapters or pages or whatever, how much I had to cover in order to get that far, get through it in a year. But there weren't really programs back then to apps or anything.
Well, when I said program, I meant like a reading setup, something that was already laid out for you.
Yeah, I think I just kind of set it up myself. And,
wow.
And did that.
What was it like as a 12-year-old to get through a lot of the Pentateuch?
Some of that is really, really slow reading, kind of repetitive a little bit here and there, but you see the Lord through it all. So even sometimes when you don't understand exactly what's going on, you still see see the Lord working in what, or just telling you about himself.
Yeah, with our family business, we start every day off with reading scripture along with employees, and we have a discussion with it. And right now we're working through, we're in Numbers right now. And, after going through Leviticus and then jumping into Numbers, sometimes you wonder, okay, what's the discussion going to be like, after we read this one? But it's always really good, because the Holy Spirit works in our hearts. He shows things to us, and it's just amazing how many pictures there are of Christ, as as you're just reading through this.
Yeah.
What was church life like for you at this time? Now you're in Texas now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what was that like?
We've been at Bernie Bible Church since it was founded. So we've seen all the locations. We've probably met at about 10 or 15 locations in Bernie throughout the years. When I was in junior high, there was a high school youth group that my uncle led. And but then as I was getting closer, there weren't as many our age. So there wasn't really a youth group when I was going through high school. I did a Bible study with one of the high school teachers here in Bernie, and he just had a group of his students that would come to his house and do Bible studies, and so we did stuff like that. And then my senior year, I was like, there's more kids coming up into high school, but there's still nothing going on. So I just started having Bible study with them, doing a little party here and there. Trying to get something started, and pass that off to someone else who was really excited about it when I went off to college. Yeah. So there was definitely some challenges, but I really enjoyed. I remember one time we were having to set up some extra chairs. I was probably in junior high at the time, to set up some extra chairs at the back for the service or whatever, and they were singing, and I love singing, so I was singing, and the guy that was helping me move chairs is like, "Why are you still singing?" I was like, I enjoy it. This is, I don't want to miss out just because I'm back here in the back grabbing some chairs. But yeah, there were some challenges in different things, but I really enjoyed Bernie Bible Church the whole time.
Do you remember anything during those years that the Lord was working in your heart?
It was during that time, actually I was probably 15. I was going down to Peru on my second mission trip, and I decided to read through the Minor Prophets. Don't know why, but it was interesting just that summer reading through the Minor Prophets, read through all 12 of them, and just seeing over and over again God's heart for Israel, that he's going to bring them back to his land and that he's going to bring them back to himself, and just seeing that over and over again, that's the heart of God. It was during that God captured my heart for Jewish people, for Jewish ministry, and got me started in the path that led to me working for 12 years with Life in Messiah in Jewish ministry.
Okay. And that was in junior high, you said?
It was junior high when I was, I was reading no, not junior high. I was 15.
Oh, okay.
That was high school.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell us about that. You've talked about going to college and also being involved in mission work. So how did this all come about? Where did you go to college?
I went to college. Well, I went to the Institute of Biblical Studies. I was out in New Jersey. I went there for a year, and it was actually a Jewish studies focus. And then I went to Moody Bible Institute because they were the only college that had a Jewish studies as a major. But it was interesting. When I went to the Institute of Biblical Studies, I was in my senior year. Mom handed me a Moody monthly magazine that had just all kinds of Christian colleges all around the country. And I read through there, and I landed on this little tiny article that was like, the Institute of Biblical Studies, studying the Bible from its Jewish perspective. That's all it said. And then a contact to get more information. But Mom gave me that magazine, and I came back to her, and I was like, this is where I want to apply. She's like, I knew you were going to pick that one. And that was just not too long after that summer in Peru when I was reading through the Minor Prophets and stuff. But so God had already kind of made that way.
So what was your time in New York like?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah. It was a really great school, small. There were probably 15 of us.
Oh, really?
Full time. And had great teachers. A couple of them went on or had worked at various universities on various levels. Reynolds Showers.
Really?
It was an excellent teacher.
Yeah.
Can't think of his first name, Dr. Varner. We always called him Dr. Varner, so I can't remember his first name. But he went on to work at the Master's College after that, and so some really good Bible teachers, all with a heart for Jewish people. Took my first trip to Israel as part of that program, and so that was exciting to get into the land to see all the things we'd been studying. Places and stuff. So
wow, and just 15 of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, it was just a small Bible institute with that focus.
Man, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was part of Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and you were there for 1 year.
1 year.
Okay, and then went to Moody.
Okay,
what was Moody like?
My first year there, Gwen was a senior, so we were together, so that was fun. And actually, after the director of the Jewish Studies program was retiring after my freshman year. So he wanted to make sure that I got to go in his program to Israel. So after my freshman year, I did my senior practicum going to Israel with him.
So you went to Israel 2 years in a row?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it would have been 2 years in a row. That time we worked with Operation Mobilization most of the time. He was there part of the time with us, but most of the time we were working with Operation Mobilization in Israel, up in Haifa primarily, and just getting to know ministry, going out into the neighborhoods and putting tracts in mailboxes, talking to people in parks, all kinds of stuff like that. Part of the congregation there and everything. But back to Moody. I had really great teachers there, lived on campus, had some good friends. I joined the men's choir, so I got just all kinds of different involvement there. Getting into the more Jewish studies classes, I really enjoyed that. And most of those were not with Dr. Goldberg, unfortunately. He was the older gentleman that had retired. But Dr. Adelnik was a great teacher, had his wife Eva teaching Jewish literature, and so I learned a lot during that time. Still wasn't really sure what I was going to do with all of that. I felt like God was leading me, but wasn't really sure what that looked like. But I enjoyed Chicago. I enjoyed Moody Bible Institute.
How long were you in Chicago? Because you were there longer than even after you graduated.
Right. Yeah. I was there with school for 3.5 years at Moody, and then I was home for a year, worked with Dad, and then I went back up after I started raising support for joining Life in Messiah.
Okay.
And I lived up there for about 11 years at the Life in Messiah headquarters.
I didn't know it was that long. Mm-hmm. Wow. So all your time in Chicago, counting Moody and then Life in Messiah, what are things that the Lord is working in your heart? How is he growing you?
How many ways are there? I mean, there are all kinds of different things. Just a lot of just trusting on him. One of the things I saw working with Life in Messiah for those 11 years was I started out with partial support. And during the school year, I was going around to schools and recruiting for our summer teams. And then in the summer, I would lead those teams to Israel. But just as my ministry involvement grew, my funds were sufficient for what I was doing. I didn't have a lot of extra funds. There was never a time that I lacked funds. I was never fully supported.
Oh, wow.
According to what the organization said, this is what a single guy doing this should have. I was never at that point, but I never lacked for anything that I needed. And just watching God do that over and over again.
Because a lot of that during that time, not only did you have your day-to-day living expenses, but you were traveling.
Yeah, and some of that was covered by the general fund because I was recruiting for the trips and that kind of thing. But yeah, some of the travel and stuff was part of my support as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I would travel all over the U.S., a couple times into Canada. We actually had a team from a little Bible school in Saskatchewan one year, and so I got to go up and do their training before we went over. So that was fun.
You say training. What were you preparing people for, these teams? That
our summer teams were evangelistic teams. So we would partner with our staff, other congregations, other ministries that were involved. And obviously it was basic stuff, passing out books and literature, talking to people on the beaches, parks, that kind of thing. We did some small projects for congregations or whatever, just helping them paint something or things like that. But mostly focused on evangelism. So the training involved kind of cultural differences in what to expect going to Israel, how people are going to react to you, and just scriptures, messianic prophecies, that kind of thing, to lead into conversations, having those conversations with people.
Did you find that there were that Jews were open to talking about Christ?
When I first started going over, particularly the Russian Jewish immigrants were very open. Most of them were atheistic.
Really?
Most of them.
Why do you think they were open to talking about him then?
They didn't. I think they really didn't have a basis in religion. Like some of them studied just general world religions, that kind of thing, but it wasn't personal.
I guess at that time, a lot of these Russians would have been the ones that had lived under communism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was a lot just new to them, something different, and they didn't really have the barriers that a lot of the other Jewish people have. That's particularly, Orthodox or the more religious Jews. They're taught, Jesus is a bad name, or Yeshua is a bad name. You just don't talk about that, and they have more of a history of being actually taught not to engage. But there were a lot of different groups. Actually, there were so many different groups of people in Israel that we talked to. Israel had people coming in from all over the world doing just basically construction work, from China, from Turkey, from just all over the place. So we'd go to their camps and share the Jesus film in whatever language. I've seen the Jesus film in Hebrew and Turkish and English and a couple other languages. Wow. Didn't understand half of the other languages, but I was showing it. I knew the story and I was sharing it with someone else that they knew those languages.
Well, that's great.
So it was fun. But yeah, there's just preparing them for all of those different things.
Okay. So now you said that you found that the Russian Jews were the most open to talking about Christ, and the Orthodox Jew was the most guarded?
Yeah, generally.
Okay. Did you ever come into? Do you ever like pretty uncomfortable situations?
There were sometimes. With one of my teams, we were at the train station at the beginning of the week, Sunday morning. The soldiers are all going back to their bases. And so we went up to the train station. A lot of anyone in the southern bases is coming through Beersheba, and that's where we were kind of based most of the time. So we'd go up to the train station and just pass out stories of Israelis that found Jesus and just different evangelistic stories to the soldiers. And one of the times we were up there, had a little Chinese lady with us, Kin Tai, and she was shy and kind of reserved, but she was out there passing out literature to the soldiers. And one of these Orthodox men came up and started shouting at her. And she's just like, what's going on? And I was clear across the other side, so I didn't actually see what was going on, but Gwen was leading the team with me that year. And so she just kind of stepped up and didn't really engage verbally, but just kind of was like, we're together. She's not alone, and you need to kind of back off. And then one of the soldiers stepped in and just started engaging the guy, just in an argument, basically.
Oh, really?
and just kind of backed him off from us. And so we kind of just moved aside, or Kintai and Gwen just kind of moved aside and continued on. But every once in a while there would be that confrontation. Not as much as you would expect sometimes, but depends on where you were and how. There was one town in the Negev, Arad, that had a lot of outreach. They used to have a music festival there, and so OM and all these organizations would come in and be sharing the gospel. So they had a lot of interaction with that, and so the community there was very resistant.
Okay. There's
an ultra-Orthodox community there, and they harassed the believers throughout the town, the ones who lived there all the time, but so there were pockets of that, but you didn't see that like everywhere.
What would you say, from your experience and all these times, would be the chief obstacle for the Jew in receiving Christ and even listening to what you have to say about him?
I think a lot of times it was just, again, the two perspectives. The religious side, it was just Jesus cannot be the Jewish Messiah. He may be yours, but he's not for us. He's not for Jewish people.
Why not?
Most of them didn't know, except for that's what they were taught. And you start, that's one of the great things about Isaiah 53 is you can read it to them, and he's so recognizable in that passage that a lot of times if you don't tell them where you're reading, they'll say, well, that's from the New Testament.
Yeah.
And, no, I'll show it to you in the Tanakh and in the Hebrew Bible. And they're like, what? So a lot of it was just what they were taught, that you just didn't talk about it. But then on the atheistic side, which is probably about half of the population in Israel, really? At least, especially with the influx of Russian Jews, it was just, like I said, at the beginning they were open, but then they got educated by the Orthodox Jews that this is not for Jewish people, and kind of to the extent of you're here, so you must be Jewish, so you need to be Jewish, and this is not Jewish. But early on, they were very open to hearing about it, just because, like I said, it was just something they had never heard.
What is it about, for those, you say they don't really know, but for those, if you did come across anyone who did know why they couldn't accept Jesus as Messiah, what was their reasoning for this?
A lot of it comes down to history. Obviously, the Jewish leaders didn't accept Jesus at the time, and that was passed down through the rabbis. The Masoretic texts were the Old Testament Hebrew scriptures that the Masoretes actually put in the vowel points. Old manuscripts didn't have the Hebrew vowel points. And some of the vowel points are specifically changed from old manuscripts to newer manuscripts by the Masoretes to read slightly differently.
Purposefully,
to distance them, including like Isaiah 7, the virgin birth, to separate that and make it not a miracle.
How do they do that?
Basically, they translate things so it's no longer that particular. So it's Alma is the word for young woman that's used in that passage.
Okay.
Other places it's used of young women of various ages. Generally, it's considered of marriageable age, but not necessarily only a virgin. There is another Hebrew word, betula, which is virgin. Which is used in a number of places, specifies a virgin. But the word there, Alma, doesn't actually specify a virgin, although there's no case in Scripture where it's used that it's obviously talking about someone who's not.
Okay.
It's a lot of times it's ambiguous. It's just this person. It tells you a little bit about them, but it doesn't tell you specifics. But use that word. So they basically, translate that as a young woman. It was probably the wife of Isaiah and the prophet speaking, and all of this goes down that line, which it may have been as an immediate answer to the prophecy with the future response later.
Foreshadowing.
Right. Yeah. But the interesting thing is in the Septuagint, which was translation into the Greek by 70 Jewish rabbis, it uses a Greek word that is very specifically a virgin. Yeah. So they knew. They knew.
Yeah.
But then they just don't teach that part.
Right.
The other, because now it too evidently points to Jesus. So we just won't teach that way. So sometimes it's just they find ways to say this doesn't really mean that.
That's interesting. Yeah. What with your experience being in Israel, how did you find the church to be there?
I really enjoyed the various congregations that we were part of. All of them were Messianic congregations, mostly Jewish believers. There were various Gentiles in various places. It was fun to see that it was kind of international. There were immigrants from different places, Brazil, from Russia, from all the stands. Just Europe, Germany, all over the place. So some of these congregations would have, someone speaking in Hebrew or English usually, and then translations going into all these different, so they'd sit in little sections, or sometimes they'd have earphones or whatever, all simultaneous. So, and sometimes, like in Eilat, the Russian translator didn't speak English. So if there was someone speaking in English, she would wait until the Hebrew translation was given, and then she would translate from the Hebrew into the Russian. So it was a lot of fun. Sometimes you couldn't communicate with people, but I've noticed that everywhere that I've gone is just the unity of the body. Whether you can communicate, you can smile, you can give a hug, and there's that unity in the body that you don't get with anything else.
Yeah.
There's
times, isn't it, when you in a store, in an airport, and you just know that person is a brother or is a sister, and often sometimes I'll ask, and I was in the hospital a few weeks back, and the nurse that was helping me, after a while, I just looked at her and said, "Are you a Christian?" And she lit up. I said, "Yes, I am," and she just wanted to talk, about that, and she was very excited to do so. But I think it's interesting, and it goes across culture, it goes across language, because this is, we are brothers and sisters. We do share that bond, and we the Lord. Through the Lord, we recognize each other. That's neat. The church in Israel, do you see them as being influential in society?
When I was there, it's been a number of years actually since I've actually been over there. But when I was there, the congregations were still fairly young. They were just beginning to get kind of biblical training for pastors.
Oh, really?
Actually, the Life in Messiah director before Wes, his father-in-law, now I can't think of his name, Mr. Curry, he basically mentored 2 or 3 pastors over there who are still leading congregations.
Wow.
But before that, they really didn't have, they had their Bibles, and depending on what language they spoke, they might have some commentaries that they could reference in their language or whatever. But there wasn't any schooling or a lot of training in that sense. And there was a lot of influences from various places. You get the more charismatic. OM was very charismatic
Okay.
when I was there. And so you get the congregations have these different influences because all the congregations have groups coming in from various places to help or to do different things. Even sightseeing, if they have a connection, they'll connect with a congregation or whatever. So they have all these different influences. But the last time I was there, they were really getting more education out there and available to the young people as well as to those who wanted to be a pastor and that kind of thing. Because before that, you'd have to go someplace else. And then it was always hard to come back, which is, you get that a lot with people come to the U.S., doctors or from India or whatever, they come here, but then they don't really want to go back to what they had before. Yeah. So, but having that in Israel and available makes it more personal, more integrated, focused on this is your reality living here, and it's relatable to what you're doing.
Okay.
Now I forgot what question I was answering.
No, that's, we were talking about the church in Israel, but I want to ask you now. How many years were you after graduation from Moody? How many years were you with Life in Messiah?
Again, I was 1 year before I graduated in December because I did 3.5 years there because of the transfer credits and stuff. And then, so from, January through July, I was just working with Dad. I joined Life in Messiah in July and started raising support, but I didn't actually move up there until the following year. Okay. So about 1.5 years between college and Life in Messiah.
Okay. After all this time, in that particular ministry, things changed a lot for you. Yeah. You were living in Chicago. You were leading teams. You were going to Israel all that time, and it stopped. It ended. Did you see it coming? Was it a surprise? What was the process?
There was a lot of different things. Our ministry training and stuff. We had just purchased a facility in New York City from another Jewish ministry that had done radio ministry from there for decades. And so we had acquired their facility. So we were moving towards doing our training and everything out there. So there were some internal changes with the ministry, what was going on. Our headquarters were still in the Chicago area where I was. It still is. But that was more of a ministry outreach location. I've heard it said by a number of people, I think you included, God looks for the least likely person to do what he wants to do. I felt a lot of that. I'm not an outgoing person. I don't start up conversations with strangers, really. And for that 12 years, that's what I did. Whether it was on a campus, talking to students, recruiting for the teams, or whether it was in Israel, going up to people and starting conversations on the beaches or whatever with evangelism. That was a lot of stretching for 12 years. And Chicago and New York are a lot different. Just the attitudes and the way people react. So I did kind of see it coming, and there were a lot of other factors as well. I didn't really know what I was going to do after that, but it was clear that I was supposed to come back here for a bit. I intended it for it to be for a bit, and it's turned into 16 years now. Wow. So,
so people understand that you were very much immersed in this, and the Lord was, had worked in your heart. You had already told us at a young age, just a desire, a concern for the Jewish people, and so this is, this has been really what your life has been about, is just immersed in this in this kind of study and these kind of relationships in this work. So much to the point to where I teach. I'm one of the teachers of the adult Sunday school class at church, and often, when we're in the middle of something, I'll look back to you and say, Israel, got any, when it's dealing with something to do with Jewish culture or Hebrew, I'll throw it back to you, and then sometimes you'll just, you'll take the initiative and speak up on things, and the Lord's really, shown you a lot in that, in this realm of study, specific study, and now you have, as far as what you do day to day, this is not what you do.
No.
Yeah. The Lord brought you back and really changed things.
Yeah.
What have you struggled with that?
Some. I really enjoyed my time in Israel, particularly with Life of Messiah as a whole, but particularly the time in Israel, my friends there, the relationships that I built over 11 years.
Yeah.
More so than the land, although I enjoyed showing people.
Sure.
Gwen and Mom and Dad came over one time after I took a Hebrew study course at just the local city Hebrew learning class, mainly designed for the immigrants, but they let me join. And they were there for like 2 weeks, and I basically just showed them everything that I had ever seen in the land before. So I took them hiking through stuff that they probably shouldn't have been hiking, because actually we had to swim across a deep pool, and I didn't realize that my mom and dad don't really either one like water.
Oh no.
So we learned some stuff, but I enjoyed showing people this land and stuff, but just really enjoyed getting them connected with people there, because the land is important, but it's being important because of the people that God has there. So the congregations and those that are involved there, that's what I miss.
Okay.
I was good at the logistics stuff, which for the teams, like I said, I was not a shining example of an evangelist. I was no Paul, but giving people opportunity to share the gospel with Jewish people while they were there, I do miss that. And but God had different directions, and He's still putting me in places where I'm not probably the best person in my mind for the position, but that's where He has me. So,
okay. So tell people, once you came home, what did the Lord do? How did He change your day-to-day operation?
Like I said, when I came home, I had no clue what I was going to do next. I immediately started applying for random jobs, random places. Like I said, I didn't really want to be in Texas because it's hot. I hate the summers here. But this is where my family was, and God intentionally brought me back to be with my family. Not that they needed assistance or anything, but just they needed me here, and I needed them, and I needed to be here. And so I started looking at what other avenues of work I could do. I looked through college catalogs and different things, and I pretty much decided that accounting was really the only thing that I might have a knack for. I had done some of that with, the planning of the team and the budget and all of that kind of stuff. So it wasn't something I was totally unskilled, unexperienced at. But I didn't really see, the sciences and medical and all of that stuff just wasn't even of interest. So I enrolled in an accounting course. I decided to do BA, even though I had a BA, because it was a totally different discipline, Jewish studies, accounting.
Yeah, sure.
I decided to start at the basics. So I got my BA online in accounting. Again, God just worked step by step, because my sister was working at one place, and their landlord of the location was an accounting firm, and so they talked me up, and I went over and helped them during tax season one year, just with the basic stuff, filing and organizing things and getting things ready. And the next year, when I was just finishing the program, the accounting program, they invited me back to help out, and they gave me some more stuff that I could do, more complex, more integral to the tax, and even some of the payroll stuff that they handled for their companies and stuff. And then one of their companies that they handled was Cold Car USA, and so the lady that was the accounting front desk secretary, whatever, was leaving, and so they needed a replacement for her, and the accounting firm recommended me to them. So I went and introduced myself, and I trained alongside of that lady for a couple of weeks, and then she left. And she was there basically with the, just do what you have to do, but not really invested. Mm-hmm. Maybe because I saw her on the way out. Maybe she was already turning that mindset, but that's what I saw with her. And so I really tried to be invested in what I was doing there. And so I started out with just the basic accounting stuff and answering phones. And my boss kept giving me, a little bit more, different things to do, get more involved in tracking things and relating to customers and that kind of stuff. And then he kept telling us he was going to retire. He kept telling Italy, which is who owns the company, a company in Italy, kept telling them that he was going to retire, and they would incentivize him to stay on. But he said, my wife says if I'm not retired by 75, she's going to leave me, so I'm going to be retired by 75. And so he had been looking for someone to take his place, heading up the little company here. And he tried a couple of different people, and they weren't a good fit. And finally he pulled me aside and said, what would you think about? And I was like, what? I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not, an out front kind of leader. I heard people from the back really kind of poke them in the right direction, but I don't get out and lead. So I told them I'd pray about it, sought some counsel, mostly from my dad, and decided there wasn't a reason to say no. So I'm now leading Cold Car USA, which imports refrigerated truck bodies from Italy and sells them around the U.S. and Canada, and Puerto Rico now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and actually we may have a customer in Guam in a couple of weeks.
Really?
We're putting together a body now. But I never thought I would be there. I would have been very happy to be in the supporting role that I had been with whoever, but God put me there. And so that's been a new challenge, definitely, just to being caring for the guys, and trying to learn to be generous with them, and just get involved in the people conflicts, which I hate. Yeah. I think everyone does, but just a big learning opportunity has come through that.
So the Lord's continuing to teach you.
Oh, then. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All along the way.
Okay. So in this conversation, we've gone from Colorado to Texas to New Jersey, Chicago, Israel, back to Texas. And we've gone from from coming to faith in Christ at 3 years old to reading through your Bible at 12. We've heard you talk about, reading through Scripture and the Lord starting to work in your heart with regards to Israel, and how the Lord set things up, orchestrated things for you to receive specific training in college to work with Jews. You've done that, and then everything changed. And now you're in the business world. You're the boss of a company. But you say that you still see the Lord teaching and providing. Now, I reviewed all of that for a reason. I wanted to repeat to you what you've said, so all these things start going through your mind. When you look back over all of this, what has been the one constant that has been shown to you?
Just the need for Jesus at every turn. I used to call my testimony the step-by-step or the lamp. You didn't list about half the places that I've actually been. Yeah. One of the other places I've been was Thailand. We went to this little out-of-the-way, basically bed and breakfast place on one of our walkabouts, and it was on a lake. The rooms were actually on pontoon boats out on the lake, attached to the shore. But out there, they had a latrine and little kitchen that had generated power, and so we'd go there at the end of the day. We'd have our supper, and then they would hand each of us a lantern. And I'd been camping and stuff, but you usually use flashlights and very different. But I found out that when you have a lantern, it has an oil basin underneath the flame. And so when you're walking around, after you get away from the kitchen and the electric lights, you can't see anything except for where that flame shows. And if you hold your lantern high, you can't see right in front of you because that black spot underneath the lantern grows. But then when you hold it lower, that shrinks and you can see the steps right in front of you. And you have to do both. You have to be able to, most of the time you have the lantern low because you don't want to trip and fall. So you're looking at where you're going. It's uneven ground. But every once in a while, you need to know, am I heading in the right direction to get to my room, or am I heading in the right direction to get to the toilets? You need to know where you're going. And God says, the scripture says, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a guide unto my path. And that's kind of what my whole story reminds me of, is every once in a while God gives you those glimpses out there, whether it's at 15 reading through the minor prophets in Peru and getting a heart for the Jewish people, or just each of the steps. There are those times that God says, this is the direction you're going. But most of the time it's step by step, and he's just leading you to the next thing. And you don't know where he's going, and you don't know what's 3 steps in front of you, but you know the step in front of you is secure because he's there with you. He's shown it to you. That's kind of the God in every moment.
Oh, that's great. That's a great way to end this. It's really clear, and I appreciate that. And I think that's really what should happen for all of us who are, who belong to Jesus. We should be able to look back and be encouraged where we are and where we're going, because he's always shown himself. Mm-hmm. He's always been faithful. He's always provided for what he requires. Thanks for doing this, Israel.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the His Hill podcast. You've been listening to our host, Kelly Doherty, and Israel Turner. We hope you enjoyed hearing from him today. Remember, as the days unfold and events come up, that we must continue to keep our eyes fixed on Christ. He is our firm foundation, and with him we can stand secure, no matter what unpredictable or beautiful thing comes our way. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in with us this week to another episode of the His Hill podcast. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.